Hi everybody, this is Chris Stafford with the Max Show. I hope all you crazy cats are in for a great show today. We are all about exposing the secrets of massively abundant entrepreneurs all over the world. And today we have the most amazing consultant, Mr. Stephen Kaufman. Stephen out of Portland is truly just a serial entrepreneur. I don't know how else to say it. He's got a great marketing consulting business, and he does everything with his marketing consulting businesses. And he started like 3 other companies that he owns right now. He's in the process of writing a book. He has great tidbits for brand new entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs that are really trying to ramp up their business. But he is so funny. We were talking about the fact that he says that he does everything with his consulting business, from fixing toilets to raising $1 million capital for his clients. Very cool. Great interview. I'm really looking forward to you hearing all about Stephen Kaufman. But before you do, check out massiveabundance.co. Sign in there. I'd love to get all kinds of free goodies to you and stay in touch with you. So without further ado, let's get on to Mr. Stephen Kaufman. Hey guys, I cannot believe that we have Stephen Kaufman in the house. I want to welcome Stephen. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, Stephen. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. And I want to get into your business because you've got some crazy, crazy things that you've told me about your business, which I absolutely love. But before we get started, let's find a little bit about Stephen, what you're all about and your background.
Well, first, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely.
I started off at Intel my first 5 years out of college to get the green out from behind my ears, and figured that 40 years at the same company, get the gold watch, and ride off into the sunset. And about 5 years into the company, they wanted to move me back to Arizona, which I did not want to return to. So I went downstairs to borrow a cup of sugar from my neighbor, introduced me to her boyfriend, who introduced me to a young entrepreneur in Portland, Oregon, and it was all over after that. I learned very quickly that people start companies, companies don't start companies, and that companies also come in sizes of 20 and 30, not 10,000. And this young entrepreneur, really, that was the point where I began to realize what it took to grow a company from scratch. I worked there for 3 years, went overseas to Europe, and worked for 3 years again for a big company, and said, that's it. That's not for me. Came back, hung out my own shingles, started my first firm selling clear-colored mice for computers.
Clear-colored mice, like mice?
Mice, but they're made out of clear-colored plastic so you can see the guts. And that I did with my old boss at Wang Labs, and that was the first of many entrepreneurial ventures I started.
I love it. That is great. Clear mice. I think I've actually seen some of those. That's awesome. Hey, Stephen, one of the things that you told me, which I think, and again, our audience here, the people that are listening right now, are the people who are either brand new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are really looking to, 10x their business, if you will. And one of the things that I think a lot of times that we get sort of caught in this little trap of, what should we do? What should we not do as entrepreneurs, especially when we're starting out? And you mentioned something really funny to me about the fact that you're different from other consultants. And tell me how are you different from other consultants?
Well, the interesting thing is I have done, and I mean this literally, every job in a company. And so what I like to tell people is that I've done everything from fix the toilet to raise $1 million of capital.
I love it.
And everything in between those two. So as a consultant, I've got the ability to come in and look at things from a strategic perspective, and then put my boots on and tactically get done everything that strategic plan calls for. So what I'm able to do is come in and see the big picture at 30,000 feet and then go straight into the weeds. And I don't care if it's setting up a part numbering system or racking in a warehouse to sitting down and writing a provisional patent. I've got the ability to go from the strategic to the tactical. And that really helps young entrepreneurs who are just getting going. A lot of them can't see what's next, or they know what they specifically are capable of. Hey, I know my product, I know my manufacturing process, but they can't figure out how to execute. That's what I do really well.
Got it, Stephen. Then, so specifically, just so everybody understands your role as a marketing consultant and what your company does, which is, the name of your company is Red Fender, and everybody can get more information about the company and Stephen at redfender.com. I'll have that in the show notes. But specifically, just so everybody knows, what does Red Fender do?
Well, our focus is in 3 key areas: in marketing, operations, and product.
Mhm.
Our view is that is the three-legged stool that holds a company up, the heartbeat. And you've got sales, and you've got finance, all these other things. But if those three pieces aren't working well together, most of the time the company is stumbling, not thriving. So what we do is we focus on all the marketing plans that you need to let the world know, hey, I'm here and this is what I have to sell. Operations is how well all that gets put together. That's whether you're purchasing your product, literally setting up your finance system, or figuring out the outbound way you're working with your vendors. And product is whether it's a service or a product, how do I package it, how do I name it, and how do I get it to market? Those are the three key areas that we focus on.
That's amazing. I mean, you pretty much have the whole thing covered. So marketing, operations, and product. And so you would go into a company and help a company. It's sort of like a holistic approach as opposed to just going into a company and dealing with marketing.
Exactly. And we look at it from sort of, or at least our customer base is all over the board. We've done gigs for municipalities that are well established. We had one company that owned a transfer station, which is a place where garbage trucks bring the garbage, they sort it, and then they move it to the landfill. They had a $250,000 bid they had to put out because they were bursting at the seams. They brought us in to say, what questions do we need to ask in order to create a decent bid? So we took care of that for them. Right now we're working with a young entrepreneur that had an idea, and that was it. We got him incorporated, we wrote his patent, and we've now hooked him up with 4 investors that are interested in putting money in his company. We span the whole range of company size, and in general, once we come in, people say, oh, I didn't know you did that. Well, since you're here, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And it starts to mushroom from there.
Right. Everything sort of snowballs after that. That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, Stephen, I want to come back to something that I know that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about, and I think that it's really sort of key when you talk about, have the whole spectrum, getting into strategy and then getting down into the weeds, putting your boots on and actually getting the work done. And when a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this, they want to start a business, they're trying to figure out, how do I start a business? How do I become an entrepreneur? And I think it's really difficult for all of us entrepreneurs to really sort of wrap our brains around, how do you do macro? How do you do, the micro and everything in between? Do you have any tips for people to sort of traverse that whole field?
Absolutely. Tip number 1, do not get overwhelmed. The truth is there's a process for all of it. It doesn't matter that my dad taught me there's 3 things. You've all heard this. I know what I know. I know what I don't know. And the part that scares everybody, I don't know what I don't know. All right?
Got it.
So it doesn't matter that there are areas that you don't know about as an entrepreneur. It's been done before. So know that there's a process already for it. So don't worry. Don't get all freaked out because there are areas that you're not familiar with. Tip number 2, surround yourself with people that know what you don't. So people will look at a consultant and, all they see is the hourly rate. That's not what it's about. Look at your consultants, your team, and I don't care if it's somebody you're paying or not, as people that can help fill in the areas that you don't know about. And number 3, invest. And I'm not just talking about money. Invest the time to investigate whether or not there's really a market for your product. That's where you can use that consultant. That's where you can use your team to help you vet whether or not what you're thinking about is something people will want to buy. I think if you follow those 3 tips when you're incubating your idea, it's amazing entrepreneurs that follow that path really end up starting companies that go somewhere.
That's amazing. Great advice. And I think that, researching what your competition is doing, researching what is out there is definitely key to starting any kind of business, really. But it sort of brings to mind a question that I have for you that I was just actually talking to one of my clients this morning, and we're talking about, you mentioned the thing about there's nothing new out there in the world. I'm paraphrasing you. But, at what point do you say to yourself when you're trying to create a new product or you're trying to create a new income stream, that maybe somebody's already done it before? At what point is it copying somebody else and stealing that idea? And at what point is it, putting your own spin at it? Is there sort of a fine line in between there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Here's how I answer that. First of all, I don't care if it's been out there for 100 years. Somebody will always build a better mousetrap. There's a reason why that adage exists. So the question is there a way to take something that people are using and repurpose it? So it doesn't matter if you're building on somebody else's idea, can you make it better?
Mm.
Sometimes, in addition to a variation, um, it may look like, well, I can step in, but the way I'm marketing it is different, or the way I'm messaging it is different, or the way I'm bringing this idea across is different. There are tons of case studies of people that have tried to bring a product to market and it didn't work, and somebody else brought it and just looked at it 45 degrees different, and bam, it's $1 million idea.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is marketing and packaging and messaging. So obviously, don't go out, look at what somebody just patented and rip it off. You're going to spend a lot of time in court, and that's about it.
Right.
But if you can look at something that's struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and you can find a way to repackage or repurpose it in a way that it resonates more, that's called being an entrepreneur. That's what entrepreneurs do. They're never satisfied with the status quo. They're always looking and saying, how can I do that different? How can I do it better? How can I do it more efficiently or effectively? Those are the ways you can take existing ideas and reuse them or repurpose them and make $1 million out of it.
I love it. I love it. And that also brings to mind, too, one of the things that you said is also about, really researching and finding out not only what's out there, but also doing research for your own mind, for your own products, finding out what kinds of things that you really need to understand so that you can then repurpose it, repackage it, to use your words, to go out there and sell it. So I think that is pretty brilliant. But, a little bit off.
I got to tell you one thing just to jump in there really quick. Build it and they will come works really, really well in Field of Dreams, and it really doesn't work well for an entrepreneur. We all think our ideas are brilliant. We all think, oh, this is great. If I could just get this to market, $1 times 1 million people and I can go buy a boat somewhere in the Bahamas. It doesn't really work like that. The truth is, and you hit it on the head when you talked about research, because it's all about validating whether the market's there, and that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. We fall in love with our idea, but we don't fall in love with the real work that needs to be done, which is, does anybody really want this?
Right.
And it's not enough to say, well, if I rushed it to market, I could get first mover advantage and win. If there's a low barrier to entry, it's just like, remember those little rubber bands the high schoolers and junior high schools were wearing that were shaped like little animals? And you know how somebody came out and they were the first ones to get it there, and then 2 weeks later, there are 5 million companies pushing those rubber bands, and a month later, they're gone? That's an entrepreneurial life cycle. If you don't figure out your market and your competition, you're a flash in the pan, and that ends up costing you a lot of money and a lot of time.
Right. Good point. Really good point. In that same sort of vein, Stephen, one of the things that I think is really interesting about you, aside from the fact that you're this uber successful entrepreneur, and I think looking at your bio, and everybody can check out the bio in the show notes and also on your website, redfender.com. But one of the things that's fascinating about you is you have all these iterations that you're always constantly changing, you're constantly moving, and you have new ideas about starting new companies or starting new ventures. Without getting into detail, but are you always thinking about new ideas? Do you think that entrepreneurs should really always thinking about new ideas within their business and always starting new businesses too? I mean, what's your take on that?
There are times, Chris, when I wish I was born knowing I wanted to be a doctor, or I wanted to be a guy that puts little plastic things on the ends of shoelaces, because it would have made my life so much easier. Right. But that's not how I'm wired. I'm wired where I'm a consultant and I help people with their businesses, but within the realm of that, I'm constantly figuring out for them and for me what's next. So I never sit still. So in addition to doing my own consultancy, I have 3 other companies that I'm working on right now that I'm either an owner of, a principal of, or I'm trying to usher forward as well. It's a disease, it's a sickness, but the truth is I love it. And any of your entrepreneurs who are watching this show are laughing because they know what that feels like. It gets in your blood and you can't get it out. And I laugh when I say it's a sickness or disease. The truth is it's a wonderful problem to have. The trick is it's great to be that inspired, but you have to have your feet on the ground at the same time, or you end up chasing fireflies at night. Because if you don't have the discipline to say, I love the idea, but before I go chasing it, I know there's steps I need to follow to see if it's got any legs to it, then you end up being an entrepreneur with great vision and no execution.
So what do good advice, Stephen, but what do you say to an entrepreneur that, let's just say an entrepreneur that has a day job? Maybe they're a CPA and they're working with a salary and they've got this great idea, this great vision, and they're trying to find the time to start a new business, do the research, do the day job, deal with the family and the kids, blah, blah, blah. Any
That's a
advice?
great question. And I'd answer it the same way I answer an entrepreneur who comes in and says, well, I just need $50,000 to do a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the answer is?
Mm-hmm.
Credit cards.
Ah.
There's a certain bar that an entrepreneur has to pass
Mm-hmm.
in order to be taken seriously by, say, a venture capitalist or an angel investor.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking for $25,000 or $50,000, the expectation is you figured out a way to make that amount happen to test your own idea before you go ask for help for someone else. In the same way that I totally respect and understand a full-time job. You can't let go of the branch until at least you feel like you've got another one to grab onto.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the fall is pretty long and pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to do your homework, which is nights and weekends. And there's no way around that.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurs, it's hard being an entrepreneur because if it wasn't, everybody would be one.
Mm-hmm.
And you know as well as I do doing these interviews what the failure rate of most entrepreneurial ventures are.
Mm-hmm.
That said, there's no substitute for the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And while, yeah, you got 3 screaming kids, a dog that needs to be walked, and a lawn that needs to be mowed, at the end of the day, Chris, you still have to do your homework. And there's no way around that. And the entrepreneurs that do the homework
Mm-hmm.
are going to be the ones that generally more successful. It's wonderful when luck falls in your lap, and it happens. You're, I believe a waitress in England writing ideas for a fantasy book on a napkin, and you end up with this huge series called Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the norm.
Right.
The norm is 12, 14, 16-hour days, and after you put the kids to bed
Mm-hmm.
and put the dog in the corner, you break open the internet and you start researching. That's how real entrepreneurs operate.
That's a great point. I'm really glad that you made that, Stephen. Excellent, because I think a lot of times people go into business. I know I work with a lot of real estate agents. They want to know how to, become a realtor and how to become successful as a real estate agent. And one of the things that they think is it's all about just going into an office and eating donuts and drinking coffee and sitting there for 3 hours and all this business is going to come to them. And I always tell them, that's BS. It's not the way it works. It takes hard work in any kind of business. And I have heard rumors that, I don't know how you do it, that you stay up late into the night doing all kinds of research and working on your business. How do you do that, stay up so late? Rhetorical question.
I have the general philosophy, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
There you go. I love that. I love that, Stephen. Hey, so going along the same line of thought that we're talking about, what's your next big plan? What's your next big vision? Anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple hints,
Sneak
and
peek.
hopefully I can come back and we can talk about it later. But I'm writing a book, and I'm actually co-writing it with a person who was my second customer in a company I started in the waste business. And we're talking about how to get rid of the mental trash that tends to stop us in all the things that we do. So
I love it.
I'll leak that out there for you and love to come back and talk to you a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
I have started a company that rents dumpsters online. If I can give a shameless plug for that, it's called rentadumpster.com. And after probably a year of setting up the site, we got our first booked order. We got our first bit of revenue, so we're very excited about that.
Very cool.
So, we can't necessarily frame that dollar and put it on the wall, but it's exciting nonetheless.
Uh-huh.
And I continue to expand the client base. The phone keeps ringing with, hey, my friend talked to you and you did really good work for them. And that's the other thing, if you're looking at being a consultant, it's one thing to market yourself because you can't get so deep in the work you're doing to not keep marketing yourself. But the best way to market yourself is to do good work.
Right.
Because that tends to get you the referrals. So we've got a lot of new, interesting opportunities that come in. The challenge, Chris, is not wanting to jump out of my consulting business and jump into all these companies because they all look so good and they all have so much potential. But, as a consultant, there's always that desire to say, well, let me take a part of the equity in that and I'll reduce my rate and put hours into it.
Right.
But, you have to let them incubate and say, this one I'm just doing for a straight up fee.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard when you have the entrepreneurial bug. It's
Right.
very hard to stay on your own side of the fence.
Well, you constantly amaze me, Stephen, because just what you just said blows my mind that you're a consultant with a successful consulting firm. You run three businesses. You're writing a brand new book. It's like, from a scheduling standpoint, how do you keep it all straight? You have any secrets?
Great question. One of them is discipline. And I learned this from my mom. She had, perfect handwriting and all the I's dotted and T's crossed. She was incredible with organization. And I learned that from her very quickly on. Any entrepreneur will tell you, and as you well know, it's just overwhelming. There's more information to process, not just info you have to process, but now where you get it. A tweet, there's Facebook and Twitter and email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping organized. How do I do it? I use Evernote. But I go back generations. Before Evernote, there's OneNote. Before Microsoft OneNote, I used Echo Pro. In fact, that was one of my early entrepreneurial ventures. I looked at trying to bring Evernote back to market.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of having a way electronically that if I get a thought, I can catalog and throw it in, so I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. I'm a huge proponent of the digital age. I love living in the digital age. I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, and I have a Mac. And bash Apple, you can recreate this with any other technology form.
Uh-huh.
But the idea of having multiple ways to access my information, my files, huge when you're a busy person.
Mm-hmm.
And I also make sure I change my voicemail every day to make sure people who need me know where I am and when I'm available. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, it's the discipline of knowing I got more coming in than I can process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to keep myself well organized and just know that, I'm going to work long days.
Mm-hmm.
I got to take care of myself, get some good exercise, get as much rest as I can, and make sure I enjoy myself, like coming on programs like this.
Great. The great answer. And I think that what's really key, what you mentioned too, is not only being disciplined and organized, but having the great health behind it. Having the great health where you can actually have the energy to sustain the kind of hours that you're going to need as an entrepreneur is really key.
Yeah, we're writing a little bit about this in the book that we're putting together, and a little tease on it. But truthfully, I think, Chris, the real answer to your question is what's in here.
Mm.
If we believe in our vision,
Mm-hmm.
if we're excited about what we're doing, then everything else falls in line. So you're not going to go out and chow four, $3,000 calorie burgers if you know you need to have the energy.
Right.
What you need. You're not going to be drinking all those 5-hour energy supplements.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go like this, and then you crash and burn.
Right.
You do good solid food. You do protein shakes in the morning. You go hit the gym.
Mm-hmm.
To keep your body in good shape. These are just things that entrepreneurs do because they know that the energy to keep going in here and keep your body moving is absolutely critical. So, I think at the end of the day, if you believe in yourself and you believe in your vision, then you can move mountains in either acknowledging this is no good and I'm done because about the only thing I can do with this idea is wrap fish with it and that's about it. Or, hey, you know what? We got something really special here. I'm going to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. A good entrepreneur has that level of honesty and commitment to both mind, body, and spirit. And I know that might sound a little woo-woo, but the truth is, you look at any of them. Mm-hmm. You look at Ballmer, you look at Steve Jobs, read a bio of any successful entrepreneur, and they're mixing those three things together, mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, it works.
I love it. I love it. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, too, is about being honest with yourself. Because an old mentor of mine once told me that when you start believing your own BS, you're dead. Yeah. So I just really love that. But let's look back, and your serial entrepreneurism, if you want to call it that, it has just been amazing. Your trajectory is really admirable. You've been so successful. Looking back, though, have you had is there one particular obstacle or challenging time that you faced with that trajectory, and how did you overcome it?
One?
Can you pick one?
I'm kidding. Yeah, it's it's sort of like walking in and seeing 5,000 index cards taped to the wall and say, okay, pick one of those. Because believe me, my failures heavily outnumber my successes. And that's probably the best way to answer your question. Mm-hmm. Because I learned so much more from when I fall on my face. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to be successful. in the sense that people will look and say, oh gosh, that was a cakewalk. You know what, Chris? It's all built on the bones of where I made mistakes. I didn't listen. I let my ego drive instead of listening to the real voice inside my head. I didn't take the advice of somebody that knew more than I did. I didn't research all the way. You know, it's just a bunch of little things that you learn from along the way that eventually you begin to pick up the signs. And as a consultant, you begin to see them in your clients that you're working with. I don't care if it's the department head of a 10,000 person company or a single person, you know, trying to get their firm off the ground. You begin to see yourself in them. Right. So there isn't any one specific thing. It's actually a collection of a huge number of failures and mistakes that I'm trying to learn from. So when I run into that situation a second time, I don't do it again.
Got it. I love that. I mean, because who was it that said, I think that they said that failure is not falling down, it's not picking yourself back up, which I absolutely love. So that excellent answer. I really love that a lot, Stephen. Question for you. You're probably one of the coolest cats I know in terms of entrepreneurs. Actually, a really nice guy too.
Thank you. Thank you.
But what's holding you back from achieving your next level? Is there something in particular that you need to overcome, or something that you really want to, more time, more space, whatever it is? What's holding you back?
I'd love to live on Mars, where I think you get a 36 or 48-hour day, let me tell you. But it's, you know, and I still wouldn't have enough time even if I moved there. That's actually a really good question. I think really what stops me is me. I'm my own worst enemy. You know, it's no matter how quote-unquote successful we are, I only see what I haven't done yet. I tend to, you know, I beat myself up because I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not that. That's part of what the book is about how to sort of get beyond that. And here I am writing a book about it, and I'm doing it anyway, about that the book isn't good enough. It's like, God, you just shut up in there already. And it's hard because that's how we're wired as people. We have this thing called emotion. And we have these experiences, and we make up stuff about it. And that just, it's like it gets a hold of your brain, and it's really hard to let it go. So probably the biggest challenge that I have, Chris, is believing in myself, especially when I'm in an area I don't know anything about. Because the moment you get out of that comfort zone and you're in the big, big, bad world looking out saying, oh no, I'm now in uncharted territory, it's just so easy for my mind to say, go back, you're not good enough. Learning how to control that speech, if I could get a better control on that, I could be even more unstoppable.
That is amazing. I love that because, you know, one of the things, Stephen, I think that you know, in the past couple of years, I've probably interviewed over 100 with this show, and I did a survey last year, probably interviewed over 100 entrepreneurs, people who started their own business, and one of the questions I always ask, what is the most important thing about starting your own business? And they always said, I thought it was a business plan, financial backing, and they all said the same thing, mindset. It was their mindset.
Mindset, great word for it. You know, financials are, you know, I just sat with a client yesterday, as a matter of fact, for 2.5 hours and asked him a million questions because I have to put his financials together for him for these investors that are interested. And you're absolutely right. It's easy to go to those areas. Well, you know, I got to figure out who my purchasing agent's going to be, or I got to find a better supplier, onshore versus offshore. That's mechanics. That's easy stuff. That's the wall we hide behind, because what's really out here, what's really that's the real challenge for us. It's what's going on in here. And it's just so easy to trip yourself up and believe that you can't, when all the signs are that you can. Get control of that language. Start turning that around. And those are the entrepreneurs that like get out of their way, because they're headed to the NASDAQ very, very quickly.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you this, sort of like, I want to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes, but what I really want to do is I want to try to get your parting advice. You've got a brand new real estate agent. You know, you've got a brand new entrepreneur that's got this amazing product sitting in front of you, and they tell you their life story. What 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice would you give a brand new entrepreneur that's just starting out?
Well, and kind of echoing what we said before, get organized. Number one, get organized. And literally that could be as simple as making a list of what is it that I need to do. In fact, I had that same conversation with somebody who had these great ideas but didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I think maybe I've got these brands. So I said, I'll tell you what, in 48 hours, would you commit to sending me a simple list that says, for this brand, these are the products I think I could develop for it.
Mm-hmm.
For the second brand, these are the products I think I could develop for it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know, I never thought about that. So step one is take a baby step.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of feeling overwhelmed, just sit down and write a list of 10 things you think you would need to do to go from point A to point B, even if point B is 2 feet in front of you.
Right.
Because once you do that basic organization, you're in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're in motion 2 feet, then you feel the confidence get in motion 4 feet, 6 feet, and boom, then you're in the fast lane at 70 miles an hour. So number one, get organized.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, build a team. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that's your sister or your father or your best friend, or you've got a bank account and some capital to bring a consultant on board, form a team of trusted advisors that will give you straightforward feedback and who know more than you, mm-hmm. or have specific expertise that can help. That's number two. Mm-hmm. And number three, research, research, research. Find a way to do it differently, or find a way to figure out whether or not the market needs what you think you want to bring it. If you did just those three things on day one when you wake up with the ding idea, you'll be in motion and you can start to make progress.
I love it. I mean, the three amazing points that every entrepreneur should definitely wrap their brain around. I think it's really difficult sometimes too, because number one, some of that requires delegating, you bringing in other people, and I think that's very hard for us control freak entrepreneurs. And also, you know,
guilty.
And I've talked to so many entrepreneurs too that develop these amazing ideas and have this amazing system and amazing teams, but they have no clue what their competition's doing. I mean, that just absolutely blows my mind. Stephen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I'm honored to have somebody as cool as you here on our stage.
No, thank you very much. Loved it.
And we are all looking forward to your new book, because it sounds to me like it's probably going to be a lot about mindset, and Lord knows we entrepreneurs all need it.
Absolutely.
Stephen, thanks a million. I really appreciate your time.
You bet. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. That's it, everybody. Is Stephen amazing? I think that this guy is funnier than I'll get out. And I love that his advice. I mean, he's got pearls of wisdom throughout this interview that all of us entrepreneurs can certainly use. And the fact that he does everything from cleaning toilets to raising $1 million in capital, I mean, that is just a kick in the pants for me. Anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed the interview. Definitely, please, please, please show me some love. Make some comments down below on the page. I'd love to hear about what you think about Stephen with his company, and also what you think about the Max Show. So make sure you definitely check out that, and also check out his website. And his website, again, is at redfender.com. That'll be in the show notes as well. Get your happy butt onto my website and sign in there and get all kinds of free goodies. And I want to thank you again for joining us. Thank you again to Stephen Kaufman, and may massive abundance be yours. Take care.